So England have got a lot of ability in their team, but can Gareth Southgate get the balance right? This is the problem for England, I think. So let's take a look at their setup for the game versus Croatia. It's going to be quite interesting to see what Southgate decides to start with. Will he adapt as the game goes on? Will he adapt as the tournament goes on as well? Um, I think one of the problems for Southgate is the defense. He's not too confident in the abilities of all the defenders, and with Harry Maguire being injured as well, I think he might look to try to make that safe and secure by putting two defensive midfielders in. He's done it quite a lot, much to the anger of some fans. The problem with the two defensive midfielders is they're not the best at keeping the ball moving. They're not the best at progressing the ball forward. Their skill mainly lies in covering, being defensive resolute, and covering across the defensive spaces. So it's going to be difficult, I think, for England if they rely upon that, because as you can see, you've got many players in the central areas, but when you've only got Mount, Sterling, and Kane as the attacking threat, you need a bit more support from the central areas. And Rice and Phillips don't really have that ability with their creativity, the ability to move the ball into different passing lanes and create them as well. It'll be interesting to see what Southgate does. I think he's going to go with the five at the back, three centre backs. The reason for that is because I don't think he'll be able to trust Stones and somebody like Tyrone Mings on their own. And I think he might look to do what he did in the World Cup and play Walker as the additional centre back. So that will allow Reece James to push on a bit more and try to get into the attacking spaces. He did very well for Chelsea in the Champions League as well as this season. He's got the ability in the attacking front as well. He's got a good way to find a cross. He's got a good way of supporting the attack. He's good crosser of the ball as well, and he can perform some cutbacks. So they may look to go with someone like James in the right wing back slot. And Luke Shaw on the opposite side too. He's had a very good season. Is a bit of a debate about whether they should play Shaw or Chilwell, but I think Shaw probably just edges it in terms of his defensive ability as well. But as I said, the problem will be progressing the ball. Mings, Rice, and Stones. Out of the three of them, Stones is probably the only one who's got the ability, a technical ability on the ball to move the ball quickly. Rice and Mings, they're quite good defensively, but they're not the best at moving the ball forward. Phillips is the same. Mason Mount will be an interesting pick if they start with him, as he's somebody who likes to float around. He can get in all kinds of spaces. He'll look to move off Kane and link up with him. Raheem Sterling hasn't had the best year. This is something that's going to be a very contentious decision for Southgate. Should he stick with Sterling, or is he in too much of poor form to trust him? But him and Kane have a good relationship. They've always built up a good partnership and scored plenty of goals between them in qualifying. So they may look to just stick with that and see how it goes. And of course, Harry Kane, can he have one of them tournaments? I expect him to do more like he does at Tottenham here and drop deep, allowing someone like Sterling to run in behind and Mount play off him. But as I said before, there's a real lack of numbers in the attacking sense. And if Croatia tend to be quite restricted at defence, then that will be difficult for England to really cause problems. Now, one of the problems I think Southgate has is the balance of the team. It's not so easy because England do have a lot of attacking midfielders that can really affect the game. So let's take a look at some alternative formations that England could use that may look to get the most out of the team. So unfortunately, we're going to have to leave some players out. It's not easy to do this, but I've tried to pick the best team in terms of balance. I've gone for Henderson in goal because I think he's just a more safe option than Pickford. Pickford sometimes has a calamity in him, especially in situations where you don't expect him to drop the ball or if he doesn't collect a cross in a calm manner. He's loud, he's communicative, but maybe someone like Henderson who's just a little bit safer in terms of these actions. Now, I would play Ben White. I think Ben White's a very good centre-back. I think he's got some technical ability that allows England to bring the ball out from the defence. I think he's a better passer of the ball than a lot of the other English defenders. He can switch play very well. He's got a nice range of passing. But one of the key aspects, I think, about Ben White is his aggressiveness in attacking, in defending against the attacker. For example, he's able to get really tight onto them. He reads the game very well. I think He's safer as well than someone like Tyrone Mings, who's a little bit rash in his tackling. He leaves elbows in sometimes. Whereas Ben White's a bit calmer. He's aggressive, but he's aggressive in a controlled way. So I think that Ben White would be a very good option. I've gone with John Stones. I think his technical ability sets him in there. Maybe we should have someone a bit more defensive, a bit more stronger in that way, like Harry Maguire, but he's injured, of course. I'd stick with the same fullback, Shaw and James, because I think they have the best all-round attributes of the fullbacks. Maybe Kyle Walker could play right back, but I think Reece James has just had a bit more of a solid season and ability about him. He's on form as well, which is always a good option. Now, I would stick with the two defensive midfielders just because I think you can add a little bit of protection there. Phillips can just cover these spaces while Reece James pushes forward. So it's a nice option to have there. Whereas Rice can do the opposite on the other side if Shaw pushes forward as well. But also Rice can just step in here. If England were to push forward, you could have something like this where Shaw is high up the pitch, James is high up the pitch, and then Phillips is just supporting the cover here with the rest of the players able to contribute into the attack, and Declan Rice can just sit in here and soak things up. So that might be one option for England as well, of course, in this way. Now, it's in the attack where England need to find the right balance. I think they've got plenty of options. Now, Jude Bellingham has really impressed whenever he's played for England, and I think he's also had a tremendous season for Dortmund. I wouldn't really focus too much on his age. He has the ability to do this, and I think he's a really good player to play in this central area to just connect things, help things link between the midfield and the attack. He's got a good passing range. He's quite tenacious, so that's a good option to have. Grealish coming in off the left. This is his most threatening area. Him and Kane could link up quite nicely here with Kane taking defenders this way, allowing space for Grealish to get into these areas and shoot, or playing someone like Mason Mount. Now, Mason Mount's an interesting option. He's always played very well for England, actually, so I think he deserves the chance. Him and James have got a good relationship on this side of two, as they know each other from their Chelsea games, which would really benefit England, I think. As the games go on, England could bring in someone like Marcus Rashford to take advantage of tired defences. I think he's probably going to be better as an impact player, Marcus Rashford. He's not had the best of seasons, and I expect him to really take advantage of tired defences. And you could also use someone like Sterling in there, of course. They're normally better off the left, the pair of them, but Grealish tends to operate better in this role. So I'd like to see how they could do that. If not, you could maybe just move Grealish into the centre a bit more, and then, or you could even just push Rashford onto the left as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see what England do in this opening game. Will they go with three centre-backs and the two defensive midfielders just to shut Croatia out and look to get a safe result, rather than open things up and cause problems? So let's see what England do in this game. It should be interesting. So what about Croatia? Well, Croatia have tended to set up with a 4-3-3 in most of their qualifying games and the recent friendly. So I expect them to stay with that, as it's very familiar to them, and it gets the best out of their three midfielders, which is Luka Modric, Brozovic, and Kovacic. Now, these three are probably one of the best midfields in the tournament, but there is problems with the age of Modric and the ability for the rest of the team to support around them. So there could be some issues for Croatia in other areas, but they're very strong in midfield, of course. So against England, they're probably going to look to dictate the game from here and control things, as England are a little bit more defensive in that respect. The three of them can also rotate, so Brozovic can move forward, Kovacic can drop deeper, of course, Modric can move to the left, he can move to the right. So I do expect a lot of triangular movement between the three of them, although I imagine that Brozovic will be the one who sits a bit deeper, as he has done for Inter Milan this season, and very successfully so. He's very good at retaining possession and also just moving the ball on to others who can start to create things. Kovacic can sit deeper as well, but I think his benefit and his advantage is actually carrying the ball forward and breaking the lines, breaking the press, and getting into some more adventurous positions. Modric tends to play a bit more of a number 10 role for his country rather than deep like he does in his club football. So I think this could be a tournament for him to really get in these spaces and try to create instead of sitting deep and dictating as Brozovic and Kovacic can both do that very well themselves. The question marks come in the forward line. I think Perisic has started to get on, but he's always been very good in tournaments, so I expect him to continue in that manner. He may play on the left, but he can also play in the centre and has been playing there in some occasions. So they may take Kramaric out and put somebody like Pasalic in, but I do expect Perisic to start on the left, which is his familiar position. He's very good at widening the field and then cutting in as well as finding space around the back. So England need to be careful for that. They were caught out in the semi-final of the World Cup from the same sort of situation as Croatia looked to find space in here and then play a ball into the back post. So they'll look to create from the half space, I think, Croatia. They don't have a lot of pace in their team as well, so they're not going to be able to play a lot of balls around the back of England. They're probably going to play in front a lot of the England defence and look to dictate and create that way. Rebic is a very interesting player, has had a good season for Milan. He's another one who's able to play on the inside and play on the outside as well. Probably not to the level of Perisic, but he's someone who does have the ability to really hurt teams. And it's going to be interesting to see if Croatia do go with Kramaric in the centre. He's not the most prolific goal scorer, but he does have the ability to find himself in them situations. So they may choose to go with Kramaric. In defence, it's a typical kind of situation, the typical back four that Croatia have always used, with Vrsaljko as the right back, Kaleta, the new centre back, and Vida, who played in the last tournament. They're quite solid defensively, but Croatia do tend to give up some soft goals sometimes, as they really do lack the dynamism to prevent goals in transition. They lack a bit of pace at the back as well. Barisic is the new left back. Be interesting to see if he has what it takes at this level. If Croatia do want to change things and mix things up, they may look to bring on somebody like Pasalic for Rebic and have a bit more of a control in the middle. But they could also turn to somebody like Petkovic, who's just breaking through into the Croatia team now. He's not the most of established strikers, but they do need somebody to fill that role in this situation. One player who could have a breakout tournament is Brekalo, the attacking left winger. He may come into the tournament if things are not working for Croatia in the way that they wish. So they may take Kramaric out, put Brekalo on the left, and they may even put Perisic in the centre. They've done it before, but then they may opt to play somebody like Petkovic in that role as well as Brekalo. So it's a bit of a difficult one for Croatia, as I think their options are quite limited in the defence and in the centre. As the games go on, can Modric play 3 games a week? If they're able to do that, I think they've got one of the best midfields in the tournament, of course, but they're getting on and they really need to start to see if they can control games as much as they used to. But it'd be interesting to see how Croatia do. It's a difficult game for England for sure. I think if Modric, Brozovic and Kovacic are able to take control of the game, England could find themselves with some problems, especially with Rice and Phillips as 2 defensive midfielders, not the best at ball retention, and Croatia may dominate that way. But Croatia are not the best team on the counter-attack. If Vida, Kaleta and Barisic were all pressed up, England may look to someone like Rashford and Sterling to get in behind as the game drags on. So it'll be an interesting tactical battle. Please tell me what you think will happen. Can England finally start to impose themselves on tournament with the talent that they have? Or will this be another game where Croatia control it and take the win? So thanks again for watching. I hope to see you again soon. Thanks.